There aren't too many super value for money earphones out there, but I think that this is one of them. Thank you to TOZO for making this review possible by sending me this demo unit. All thoughts and opinions are my own. So let's jump straight into this review with how these are built. The unboxing experience for the TOZO T10 is fairly simple. You get the earphones in the case, a charging cable, a lanyard, not 2 or 3 extra sets of ear tips, but 5 extras. 3 sets having a firmer inner bore and the other having a softer silicone bore like the ear tip itself. And you get the literature. TOZO has decided to go simple with the case and earbuds, which I like, and by that I mean there's no flamboyant branding like you see with many brands. You won't see any branding on the lid, you'll only see it at the base. This case has a USB-C charging slot at the back and the lid is slightly translucent, so you can see the lights on the earphones and case's battery lights when you put the earphones in. Moving on to the earphones, you won't see any blatant branding here as well. Each earphone is marked with an L or R on the touch control area depending on which ear it's supposed to go into, and you will see the branding on the inner side of the buds. On a comfort front, these sit quite snug in my ears, so I'd say if you have smaller ears, these might feel a little uncomfortable over longer listening sessions. The ear tips are quite comfortable though, and if you don't want to use the firm bored ear tip, you can always shift to the softer ones. If you plan on using these in the gym or happen to get caught in the rain, these should be more than capable of handling those settings thanks to its IPX8 rating. These come with Bluetooth version 5.3. It has wireless charging, which is a nice surprise. It has touch controls and it has its own app support. From within the app, you can tweak a manual EQ and play around with presets. I'll speak about this in the chapter about sound. You can go to the settings to customize your touch controls, which by default are set to a single tap being a play and pause gesture on both earbuds. A double tap will take you to the previous track on the left bud, and the same will take you to the next track on the right bud. A triple tap will activate your voice assistant, and a long press and hold will reduce the volume on the left earbud and increase the volume on the right. What's neat is if you keep pressing, it'll continue to increase or decrease the volume instead of just modifying it by one increment. A single tap will answer and end phone calls, a long press for 2 seconds will reject incoming calls, and the same will hang up a call if you're in one. All gestures can be customized to the available functions on either bud, so you can choose which ones you're comfortable with. Then you can also check for firmware updates as well for whenever you want to be on the latest one. And when it comes to its latency, honestly, I think it is a good performer. It doesn't have a separate game mode that you can toggle with the app, but just by itself, when you consume any visual content, be it video or gaming, there is bound to be a slight lag, which it does have. It is wireless end of the day, and if you don't want any delay at all, you might as well move to something that's wired. But considering it is wireless, I'd say it's pretty decent. There is a slight sync issue as is expected, but if you do watch downloaded content on the VLC media app by any chance, you can always play around with the delay with that if you do want to get the perfect sync. Now, this doesn't have active noise cancelling, and I know a lot of people do prefer having it, but there is a group of people who doesn't like having active noise cancelling. And the thing is, when I first put these on, I genuinely thought it did have active noise cancelling because of how well it isolates. In fact, once you get the correct ear tip size on these earphones, their isolation is absolutely terrific. It cuts off all sorts of frequencies except maybe lower rumbles, I'd say. So it's all about getting the absolute perfect ear tip fit if you do want to isolate the world around you. But even though this doesn't have active noise cancelling, it does have microphones to govern the environmental noise cancelling for any phone calls you may want to make. So if you do want to see the tonal quality of your voice being carried over to your recipients in a busy setting, there really is only one way to try this out. So I'm calling you from the usual busy street I do all of my call tests from, just to give you a sense of the amount of noise these earphones are going to be battling. They do have some form of environmental noise cancelling, but they do have only one microphone per earphone, so it'll be interesting to see how these manage. Now, of course, there are two-wheelers, four-wheelers, you will get a few trucks, and you might get the occasional pressure horn as well, and there is some construction work going on over my left shoulder. So anyway, I have been on the camera microphone all this time, and I'll switch over to the TOZO T10 microphones right about now. So this is the overall tonal quality you can expect to carry over to your recipient. Now, no doubt, this is the busiest or most crowded setting you can be in if you're on a walk or on a run. If you are speaking from a controlled environment like your office or home, it will certainly do a lot better because it's not going to be managing with all this noise. Now, usually in this point of the call test, if a set of earphones has active noise cancelling,
I switch between those modes just to see if there's an added load on the environmental noise cancelling. So since it doesn't have ANC, what I will do is I'll put one of the earphones in the case to see how one earphone handles the environmental noise cancelling in case you do want to stretch out your call time a bit. So I'm just putting this earphone back in the case and it should deactivate. Well, it should have deactivated by now. So this is how it will sound if you've taken a call only on one earphone in particular. So I do hope this demo is giving you a better understanding of the earphones. And of course, you are sitting in the viewer seat, so you get to see whether or not you like how your voice will carry over to your recipient. Of course, I will see you back at the studio.
These come with 8mm dynamic drivers, support the SPC and AAC codecs, and have a frequency response of 20 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz. Now, on a volume front, this is a bit different because most earphones are very linear in their approach towards volume boosting. This one is quite different because all the way from as low down as 5% to say 35-40%, it is a very subtle increase. So as soon as you hit 50%, there's a sudden spike in volume. So after 50 and then 60 and then 70, there are considerable boosts in the volume. So below 50%, it does, it is not as loud as I think a lot of people would like. In fact, most other earphones I don't listen to above 40-45 volume, but this does have to sit above, I'd say maybe 50-55, maybe even 60% volume. The fun area is around that 65 to 70% volume. So it is enjoyable in that range in particular. And if you do intend on preserving your hearing, I wouldn't advise listening to this at 80% volume or higher over prolonged periods of time. Those lower volumes below 50%, even all the way down to 30 and I'd say even 25, are soft enough to be able to enjoy, especially when winding down at the end of the day. And what's pretty surprising about this is most audio equipment does tend to thin out a lot when you go down to lower volumes, but this does manage to maintain a certain sense of roundedness even in the lower frequencies down at lower volumes. In fact, TOZO has tried out some new technologies with this set of earphones in particular, and I'd say the fact that it sounds as rounded as it does at lower volumes is actually pretty good. Soundstage from these perform like most other TWS earphones. There is a bubble within your head with good left and right separation, and it does have a well-centered phantom channel. Now, there are times when it does give you the illusion of some tones coming from slightly further out of the earphone. This actually does happen a little more often than not. So it does depend on what kind of music you're listening to and how well it was recorded. But the fact that it's able to sound slightly wider when it comes to its overall stage is quite commendable. On an imaging front, this is, I'd say, pretty well defined, at least for its price range. The detailed recovery on this isn't exactly pin sharp. It's not audiophile levels. You can't expect that kind of level of clarity to come from wireless earphones anyway, but it is good enough to let you zone in onto certain nuances in your music and really enjoy it. The edges aren't extremely sharp or defined. They are slightly curved, but it is an enjoyable experience. When it comes to its high frequencies, on the TOZO website, there is a small show of a frequency graph. Now, the higher frequencies look like they'll just cut your ears off very aggressively, but when you listen to this, it tells you a slightly different story. This range isn't close to being piercing and comes to you in a relatively relaxed and smooth manner. It does have a good amount of enthusiasm but isn't blatantly in your face. It does have a good amount of detail here and shimmers do sound rich in their delivery, but it's not pushing as hard as I thought it would, so stays clear of being fatiguing over longer listening sessions. Listening to the new Radicals perform, you get what you give. This track is filled with excitable highs right through it, and at no point does it start hurting the ear. You could have this on loop for hours on end and still keep enjoying this youthful, energetic piece of music. Mid frequencies are certainly recessed compared to the highs, but TOZO has been careful to ensure that you do get a rounded mid-range. Usually with recessed mids, most manufacturers dip the lower mids even more so, which only makes instruments and vocals in this range sound nasal and thin. But here they've managed to maintain a rounded and full sounding mid-range, ensuring vocals sound a lot fuller and truer than I've heard on most other earphones in this range. Listening to Adele perform Easy on Me, her voice can get lost with many earphones in this range. There is a certain amount of depth her voice carries, which when lost also loses emotion in her performance. These earphones manage to maintain her range well, ensuring you hear every bit of depth in her performance. It's nice to see TOZOs not trying to replicate what everyone else is doing and be true to a better sound. Low frequencies are certainly elevated, but it has been tastefully tuned. It's not obnoxious, so won't take over the mid-range much, and it doesn't interfere with imaging as well. It does have a very obvious boost compared to the mids and is enthusiastic in its overall delivery, which does ensure a level of fun when listening to anything bass happy. Listening to Coldplay perform Adventure of a Lifetime, this bass line here is large enough to make you think you're listening to a set of headphones producing this range. It's big, surprisingly tight in its delivery, making it that much more fun to listen to, especially if you intend on using this for any workout sessions. Now, if you do want to play around with the sound, TOZO does have the manual EQ option within the app. It has 10 bands you can play with, and you get a plus minus 5 dB gain. So you can really dial it in when it comes to fine tuning your own sound. And if you don't want to play around with your own EQ, you can go into the presets. Now, you usually only get 3 or 4 presets with most manufacturers, but TOZO has offered up 15 different presets, and the presets that you get are Bass Plus, which does as it says and boosts the bass like mad. Bass Minus reduces the amount of bass and impacts the mids a little bit as well. Classical develops a very aggressive sense of bass compared to the last preset with elevated highs and recessed mids. Dance has a little more focus on the sub-low frequencies in elevation with a recess in the upper bass region. The mids have an elevation with this preset. Deep takes on a hollow sounding tuning with the mids boosted and highs recessed aggressively. Hip hop takes on a sense of excitement in the upper bass, upper mids and high highs, bringing a little richness in clarity. Jazz has a recess in the mids with elevated highs and upper and mid bass. It does do a good job with jazz and blues. Original looks odd on this graph, but it sounds like it's suited towards podcasts and audiobooks thanks to its mid-range boost. Piano does sound more musical than the last preset, and this will work well for instrumental music. Pop is tuned to boost mid-range, but it doesn't sound hollow or boxy. R&B has quite an excitement in the bass, a pullback in the mids without making the mid-range sound too recessed somehow, and the highs are more aggressive. Rock is a little more easygoing than R&B and might be easier on the ear if you're not a fan of heavy bass. Vocal boosts the mid-range with a dip in the bass and highs. This can sound a little on the tinny side, but somehow the bass is still hearty despite the recess. Treble Plus does as it says, and it does get quite sibilant with this preset, and Treble Minus eliminates the highs and can sound quite flat with the highs and mids, making the bass quite prominent. So to sum up, overall on a build front, I do like how this has been put together. In fact, one of the things I really like is there's no blatant branding anywhere on the case of the earphones. They've been very quiet about it. In fact, I think a lot of people who don't want to be loud about what they're listening to or what product they have will actually like this approach because it is quite subtle. One thing that I have found quite odd is whenever I'm using these earphones, they do sit comfortably. On a comfort level, they're pretty good, but whenever I reach to pull them out, the sections that I can grip onto feel very slippery because I think the edges of the earphone are glossy. So when I reach to it and try and pull it out, it's not always a perfect grip. So I do have to struggle a bit to get it, or I have to push my ear to sort of push the earbud out and pop it out. And on a comfort front, I do find it comfortable, but my left ear is a bit smaller than my right ear, so I have felt some pressure in the concha on my left ear. So that only leads me to believe that if you do have smaller ears, you might find there to be a little bit of discomfort, and if you do have really small ears, the discomfort can lead to pain. So that's one thing to keep in mind before deciding to pick these up. But having said that, I have used this for prolonged periods of time, meaning I've used them for maybe 2.5 to 3 hours at a stretch. I usually don't like to go beyond that because I like my ears to breathe. So I do take out my earphones at about 2.5 to 3 hours, and I have felt pretty comfortable with them. Only that slight pressure on the left ear, but otherwise they're fairly comfortable. And the ear tips that do have the softer silicone on the inside, which aren't as firm, are certainly a little more comfortable. So it's worthwhile seeing which ones you like in particular before deciding to wear them for a long period of time. On a feature front, honestly, this has got everything you need. It's got touch controls, it's got app support. The app is also, it's fairly basic, but it gives you what you need. You get the firmware upgrade, you get the touch control options that you can, change up a bit. you can't really customize it. You can just choose what's there and change it to a different setting. The EQ modes and all I think are pretty cool along with the presets. But what I find the most fascinating, considering the price range that this hits in, is the fact that it has wireless charging. So if you happen to have a phone that has reverse charge and your battery is packed up, you can always charge it to that. The fact that they've incorporated wireless charging in a set of earphones that costs as much as this is unbelievable. Of all the earphones I've been reviewing in all these years, I don't think I've in fact reviewed a set of earphones that has wireless charging at this price point. But maybe I did review something about 4 years ago, and they've been phasing it out. No other earphone, even twice the price of this, does have wireless charging. So it's nice to see that they've incorporated this within this. Now this doesn't have active noise cancelling, which I think is fine, because I found that a lot of these earphones that have active noise cancelling, I have had a lot of people write to me saying that they don't even use the active noise cancelling because they don't like it. There are a lot of people who don't like that sensation. So if you're one of those people who doesn't want to have active noise cancelling, don't pay for the extra features if you're not going to use it. This set of earphones doesn't have it, and its isolation is actually so good that I honestly did think that it does have active noise cancelling when I first put it on. It isolates terrifically well, and more so once you get the absolute correct ear tip size. On a sound front, I found these to be terrifically surprising, because I was expecting something that would sound very tinny and wouldn't sound very, it wouldn't engage me when it came to music listening. But this surprisingly has a heavy bass. It is a very bass happy set of earphones. It is a little over enthusiastic for my taste. I'm not exactly a bass enthusiast. I don't love too much bass, but I can see a lot of people enjoying this for rock, for heavy metal, for EDM. But what caught me quite by surprise more than the bass was how it handles its mid-range, because everybody is tuning their earphones to taper off in the lower mid-range so that the bass is overemphasized. This is more, should I say, they've not dropped the lower mids too much. The lower mids do have a bit of a drop, but the fact that you can hear Adele's voice sound as natural and as rounded as it does with these earphones does say a lot about how they've tuned these. Now, the first thing that usually gets hit with her voice on those kind of tunings is it sounds like she has a cold. She starts sounding nasal. So the fact that TOZO is able to have done this through whatever tuning they've done is quite impressive. And the highs, of course, I do quite like how they've tuned it. It is elevated. It is well, it doesn't sound as aggressive as it looks on the graph that TOZO's put on their site. I usually don't like to go by graphs. I like to go by what I listen to and what I think it sounds like. And I think they've done a pretty good job tuning it all in all. In fact, coming back to the mid-range, which I think is the most impressive, there's a specific track that I've heard by Kieran DuCrow, and it's got a choir singing in the distance, which a lot of earphones tend to just sort of really dumb down those vocals because they're softer and they're coming from a little further away. This is able to bring it closer to you with enough detail and nuance. You're able to listen to all the different sections of this choir. So the fact that these little earphones can do this is nothing short of amazing. So all in all, I think these are a really terrific set of little earphones, and I think they're super value for money. So coming to their price, well, at the time of recording this video, they do have a maximum retail price of $39.99. And if you're watching from India, that's 3,899 rupees. But they do have a selling price of $24.99. And in India, that goes for 2,699. And in fact, I'll leave all the links down below if you do want to pick these up. And honestly, are these, if you want to know if these are value for money, hell yes, these are terrific value for money. If you're a stickler for active noise cancelling, don't look at this. It's all right. It's not for you. But if you want good sound, if you want something affordable, if you want something that has wireless charging, it has a good build. It's a little discreet. It's not screaming what kind of brand, or the brand name is not on it. If you're into that kind of stuff where you want something subtle, that sounds good, that's good to go, throw into your pocket. It's small enough to carry wherever you want to go, and just have a companion on your commutes to work and back, or in whatever situation. I think this is a terrific set of earphones to own at this price point. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I hope I helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.